Hello, and welcome to Ward Talk, CTN's look at the political scene in Ann Arbor. I'm your host, Bonnie Gabowitz. We'll be discussing issues and solutions with the City Council members from our 5 wards on the 3rd Wednesday of each month. Joining us is Ali Ramlawi from Ward 5. Welcome.
Thanks, Bonnie.
And this is your very first time on our show, although you've been on in the council for a good year now.
Yeah, it's been a challenge to get me in here,
right.
scheduling
well,
wise.
You're all so busy with so much going on with the city as well as your own businesses.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start the show really and just getting to know a little bit about you and what your relationship is with the city of Ann Arbor and how you decided to get involved with being on the council. So tell us about yourself.
Well, thanks. I grew up here in Michigan, not far from here, between here and Detroit, in Livonia. As a kid, I went to K through high school, and then my family started businesses in Ann Arbor. So I started coming here back in the 80s. 84 was my first year in Ann Arbor, but we still lived back in Livonia, and we'd commute.
So your first connection with Ann Arbor was the family-run business.
Yeah, yeah. There was a store we had on State and Packard, Ralph's Market, back in 1984.
I wasn't there then. So.
Yeah, so I'd hang out on that corner, and my summers would be spent there. There was a lot more fun things to do in Ann Arbor than there was in Livonia. I used to go to the Pinball Pete's and Double Focus and the Michigan Union. I used just an arcade rat. When I wasn't putting away bottles. And then, later on my dad opened Jerusalem Garden, at 307 South 5th Ave. And unfortunately he passed away when I just turned 18 years old, back in '93. And at the time I thought I knew, I guess I did, how to take over the family business. It was at that time a really small place and a few employees, and before the internet and cell phones, so different time, and took over the business at age 18 in 1993, and
that was
Ann Arbor.
that was quite an undertaking to take on a business like that. But
yeah.
I'm sure your passion was there.
Yeah, there was a lot of emotional connection to the place, and honoring my father's legacy and what he left for us, and I'm glad I did. It really has worked out well for me and my family and the community.
And when did you eventually move to Ann Arbor?
2001. Actually, it was the week of 9/11. I'll always remember that, obviously. Finally, my younger brother finished high school, and there was no more reason to be in Livonia. So I packed up my bags and came to Ann Arbor and moved to 7th Street a couple of years later, so I've been on 7th Street now since 2003, Old West Side, so I can walk to work.
You're still in the same house?
Yep, yep, yeah, and I have a cat and a girlfriend, and life is pretty good right now.
Right. And you have a restaurant right now?
Oh yeah, it's nice to be on city council, but it doesn't pay the bills. It might help with the dry cleaning, but you got to have a full-time gig. Yeah. So I think that's why it was important. It might lead into this. Well, I'll just end it there, and I might answer a question on it later.
Right. Okay. Well, I understand you ran twice. The first time you didn't make it to be on council. The second time you did. So what was the driving force behind you wanting to be a part of the decision-making process? What really moved you to this point?
There were developments in the downtown area, the library lot being one key development that galvanized a lot of people in our community, and it galvanized me in 2017. At that time, I didn't feel like the voices of the community were being heard, and I just felt like it was the time for me to, make a stand, I guess, and have more diversity on city council, more opinions, more different backgrounds representing the city of Ann Arbor. So I decided to run as an independent in 2017, and And within a short 10-week campaign, I fell just a couple hundred votes shy of winning. So I now serve with Chip Smith. He's a great person to work with, and we have a great relationship. So, and then the following year, I ran against Chuck, and I just won by a couple hundred votes. So it's a very close, margins both ways. So, I think the 5th Ward is represented well right now with their 2 council members.
And there are some topics that come up to practically every show, but there's always something new to learn about it, or there's some progress or lack of progress that has to be explained. So affordable housing, of course, is a big issue for Ann Arbor. And is there anything new or something for the viewers to understand that that's important to know?
Yeah, I mean, just last council meeting, we passed a slew of resolutions addressing affordable housing. We've identified 2 sites that have very good scores on, being shovel-ready, best return on our investment, and that's the surface lot at 4th and Catherine, and then another property on Ashley Street, I think 406.
So
Ashley
all these properties,
but there's 10 of them total, yeah.
Have they just been sitting there not being used?
Correct. I mean, a lot of them have challenges. They're on floodways, floodplain, contamination. They're not they don't come without some challenges. But there are 2, like I just identified earlier, they have the least amount of challenges that can help us address our issues with affordable housing right now that we're struggling with in our community.
And so how close are we time-wise to actually see something happening?
I think the soonest would be 2 years until, 2 to 5 years is what we're being told, to have actual tenants and people living in those new developments. 2 to 5 years. So not soon enough, but every day we wait, that's just a day longer.
The wheels turn slowly.
Well, there's a lot to do, and government does move slowly on purpose.
And to go along with that, I had asked just before the show if you had any information on updating on how the city is looking at the zoning laws, because the zoning laws really tie into the council's ability to accept or deny or insist on changes when a developer comes. And I think it's important for the citizens to know that you can't just say, oh, I like this idea, we'll stamp it and say okay. You really have certain zoning laws that you absolutely must abide by that can make it difficult.
Which converse is really the case most often when developers have by right,
And what does by right mean?
It's zoned, in downtown district, if it's D1 or D2. If it's D1, let's say, and they have by right development rights, they can go up 180 feet to block out somebody's view. That's not something that we can.
And you have no control.
We have no control over it. If you have by right, if the zoning if a piece of land is zoned to be used for a certain type of development, and somebody owns that land, America is steep in property rights. I mean, and property rights are been here since day one, and so that's how our government's been formed, and that's where our government puts its power, is in people's rights on their property. So if they have the right to build 180 feet and it blocks out, the view for somebody, or the traffic that comes with it, and the stress on the infrastructure, it's very difficult for City Council to say no. So it is important right now as we go to look at our master plan, and that's what we're doing right now. We are looking at who to hire, and we've engaged our community. Each ward.
As a consultant?
Yeah.
Who to hire?
Yeah. So, but first, what we're doing, we've engaged each ward to have a representative to work with city staff on who to choose to work on the master plan that will begin next year. So we've budgeted $500,000 in this year's budget, and we'll probably need to put a few more $100,000 on top of that to do a new revision of the master plan, which will identify some of the issues that we're having with our land use. The land use issues, we need more density in some areas, other areas don't have the infrastructure. We're trying to save the characters of certain neighborhoods. We have, I think, 13 different overlay districts. I mean, it's just very complicated stuff when you get down to it. I mean, I've been on council for a year, and I'm still got a lot to learn when it comes to land use. And
So this is really a long-term project.
oh yeah,
You know,
and it's
I mean,
one that I think happens.
Not 6 months, for sure.
No.
Yeah.
No, but one that it's long term and has big impacts. Because again, if it's by right, you know, and we don't approve it for a really good, strong reason, the city will get sued, and most often the city will lose.
And in the minute left, I'd like to just start talking about, you're on quite a few commissions, and after the break we'll definitely continue talking about it. You're on how many commissions?
9 or 10.
Wow.
I'm an alternative on one, an alternate that is, but so I'm 10 if you consider that one.
Right, and
Yeah.
if people want to know what all the commissions are, they can go on the a2gov.org site,
Yeah.
website, and see what all the commissions are and all the different areas that you council members actually have to be involved in, other than the regular monthly meetings.
Yeah, that's where a lot of work is done. That's where a lot of legislation is crafted and ideas are formed and discussed, is in the boards and commissions. And Ann Arbor has dozens of those to help staff and elected officials be better informed and making decisions.
Well, we'll talk about that
All right,
next.
great.
Okay, great. We want to hear from you, so please email us questions to ctn@a2gov.org or tweet us at #CTN in Arbor. We're taking a break now, and we'll be coming back with more from Ward 5.
CTN Sports, bringing local sports to you.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz, and this is Ward Talk. We're talking to Ali Ramlawi from Ward 5, and this is his first time on this show. So I'm very excited to have him, and we were just starting to talk about the commissions, all the different commissions on that the council is involved in. And I was shocked, actually, when I looked online to see all the different commissions that you were involved with. Not you personally, but everyone who's on the council also has other assignments.
Yeah.
And from what I understand from previous guests, it's not always something you choose. You get assigned some of these positions?
I mean, exactly, depending on schedules and, you know, your background and your interest.
So they try to match
seniority.
you up.
They try to match you up.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the mayor pro tem, in this case, Councilmember Lum, first reached out to us and asked us what our interests were, and then we, you know, responded with what we'd like to be on. And she did her magic and somehow came back and got us all figured out. And then, of course, the mayor, you know, has to sign off on it. And,
And is this a one-year position, or is it?
It depends on what board or commission it is. Like, I'm on the LDFA board, the Local Development Financing Authority, and I'm on that one until I leave council, the way that the bylaws are written for that board.
So each commission has different guidelines as
Yeah.
to how long you're on it, and, okay.
Depending on the ordinance or the bylaws of that
Okay,
board or
and
commission.
how are the committees on these commissions, what is their job in general, before we get to the specific ones? I assume that they do some kind of studies, and they're an advisory board that then they bring to the whole council?
Yeah, I mean, they have, you know, their mandate, you know, spelt out, and that can always be changed by council's directive. Some of our assignments, you're a voting member, and others you're just a liaison. But it's a good touch point between, you know, the policymakers on city council and the folks in our community who are working to better understand our needs and our focus and where that should be. So it's a communication channel between, you know, the policymakers and everyone else, the worker bees, doing some of this legislation work.
And,
you know.
and how often do they meet periodically based on what the needs are?
Well,
are they
again, it goes to
different?
bylaws and how the ordinances are written. Some of them are required to meet monthly, and others, like I'm on the Liquor Review Commission, and we only meet at the beginning of the year a few times, and then after they've all been approved, we only meet when there's a need to meet, when somebody's applying for a liquor license, and then we get together to review the application.
So which commission do you meet the most, have to meet much
Well, I've
more
been
often?
doing a lot of work with the Police Oversight Commission.
Okay, so let's start
TikTok.
with that.
It's a new commission that was formed just before I joined council, and it was out of the death of Aurora Rosser, who just, the 5th year anniversary of her passing was last month or earlier this month. So out of the wake of that tragedy, the community asked and received a Police Oversight Commission to independently review complaints made against the Ann Arbor Police Department. So that's a new commission. I am one of the 2 liaisons to this commission. Councilmember Lum is the other council member. We are non-voting members, but we've met a lot, and we've actually had subsequent meetings in between the monthly meetings and additional training. In each meeting, scheduled meetings monthly.
And from what I understand, you went through a long process of actually choosing who was going to be on this commission in terms of citizens.
Yeah, you're right.
Which took a while.
The Human Rights Commission helped a great deal with that. They were the commission, and I'm also a liaison to the Human Rights Commission. So they helped take in the applications, score the applicants, and then gave that to the liaisons of the Human Rights Commission and the liaisons to the Police Oversight Commission.
And
so,
have they started to actually meet now?
Oh, our first meeting was back in April.
Oh, okay.
You know, in fact, we had a meeting last night. Again, they're monthly meetings. Each meeting lasts at least 2 hours. So these are not short meetings. There's a lot to do. But yeah, it's working out well.
And what is your impression so far? And I mean, it's in its baby stages now, but what is your impression of it actually helping make changes, or
Well, I think
helping
first,
the police force look at how they can make some adjustments?
well, I mean, already they're making adjustments because of this new
That's
police
great.
commission. We hired in a new police chief, Chief Cox from Boston, who is rich in history with community-oriented policing, who's more engaged than prior police chiefs with his constituents.
More hands-on.
More hands-on. He has monthly meetings with us to talk about whatever we'd like to talk about. Every third Friday or second Friday, we meet with him for an hour, myself and Councilmember Smith. He meets with all the ward members. And so, first we have to figure out what this commission needs, and we have to also get these commissioners trained to review complaints. So there's a lot of foundation work that needs to be done before we can have the kind of commission that we ultimately want to have. A lot of learning, a big learning curve.
And how do they deal with the confidentiality issues?
Well, that's part of the problem that we discussed last night, the redacted sheet.
And I wasn't there.
They do need to keep things, confidential. The commission doesn't have concurrent investigative powers. That was one of the issues that it had while it was being discussed. So the police need to first send the information to the city attorney's office. The city attorney's office redacts the sensitive information before it turns it over to the commission for the commission to review.
So they might be looking at a particular issue and how it was dealt with behaviorally, but not necessarily know which individual is involved.
Correct. And then also,
I think that's important for people to know.
they'll be given, there's a bunch of policies and procedures that are instituted in our force. So the police will also give, with that information, the policy or procedures they use to come to their conclusion. So there's quite a bit to learn, as you can imagine, and we're just discussing how we can build the institutional knowledge for this commission for future commissioners to be able to have without having to recreate the wheel every time someone new is appointed.
But it does sound like one of the fulcrum points is the fact that we have a new police chief who's open to, looking at making changes and has a lot of experience. That sounds like that's
huge.
That's a powerful factor right now, and where we're at time-wise.
Yeah, it kind of lined up very well.
Yeah.
That the police chief was hired in at the same time this oversight commission. So that was a big, question. Those are big questions that we had for the police chief during the interview process, and we wanted to find somebody who could help this commission off the ground, who had the background, the experience, and the knowledge to give it the support it needs to be successful. So I'm excited about this police chief, and I just hope he sticks around for a really long time.
Yeah. Tell me something. I'm from Boston.
Oh,
Does
wow.
he have much of a Boston accent?
No, he doesn't. No, he's very soft-spoken. He's a gentle giant.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think you would.
But you can understand him speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
And in terms of the other commissions,
I'm on like the DDA Partnerships Committee,
Yeah.
which is a nice one for me to be on as a business owner in the downtown community.
Yeah, tell me about how your business experience. What do you bring to the council with the experience you have and the point of views that you have? What do you think is different or special about what you bring?
I think I'm just used to managing risks more and managing money and looking at return on investment and knowing I'm on audit committee as well. That's another. I'm on the labor and budget board committee as well. So just having my background, dealing with staff, dealing with contracts, insurance, investments, money. I don't know. I think it's a different vernacular when you come from a small business. When you're looking at our budget, you look at where we're spending money, how we're spending the money, what are we getting in return for spending that money? Because our needs are limitless, but our resources are finite. We only have so much money every year, and when you take care of all the necessities, the health care costs, the unfunded liabilities, fire and safety, the roads, you get down to it, and you're just left with, probably less than $10 million in discretionary spending.
Which really isn't a lot for a city like Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
10 million might sound a lot to me, but with all of
120,000 people, yeah.
yeah.
Just doesn't, it's not much, unfortunately.
right.
Now with our needs.
And in the minute we have left, just tell me a little bit about your perspective of working on the council and, and what you look forward to in the future.
Well, now that I got a year under my belt, I understand how the organization works better, who to go to for things. I've developed working relationships with staff. I've been on all these different boards and commissions, airport advisory as well, and just the list goes on. So I know quite a bit, and so now hopefully I can use this information and go forward with it to start really developing some concrete legislation and shifting our focus, like for the DDA. I think there's some reforms that there can happen and address some more of our community needs in a more effective way. But I know my other colleagues on council where they stand, they know where I stand. So I think we can hopefully begin to gel a little bit more. There was no election this year, fortunately. So now our energies
So you can really focus and
yeah.
concentrate on.
So I think it's important here in the next 6 months to 8 months to really work on things together before we have an election, which will maybe put things on hold for a while. So I really look forward to these next 6 months as we draft the new budget. I know what to look for in this budget. I didn't know necessarily what to look for, so we got a budget retreat coming up in a couple weeks. I already know more to what look for. Last year it was all Greek to me.
Yeah, so it really takes a good year to really wrap yourself around everything. And
For with anything in life, I think 1 year is a really good thing. You got to go through all the seasons, all the holidays,
And now we're back. Okay, well, I just look forward to the next year, seeing what you can do to help the city out.
Yeah,
And it's
please
been a
do. Yeah,
pleasure.
reach out to us. Let us know. We love to get emails that our constituents send us. They do have an effect. We do listen, and we try to respond.
Great. Okay, and I'll see you again.
All right, I hope so.
Okay.
All right.
And remember to join us for a new episode every third Wednesday of the month. We want to hear from you, so please email us at ctn@a2gov.org. Attention, Word Talk. You can also follow CTN and ask questions on Twitter at twitter.com/CTN in Arbor. We'll make sure to include your questions. For Ward Talk, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz. Until next month.